So we're asked, is the statement true or false? Data is a subset of the population studied. So before we do that, we talk about data as two types. Data can be population data. I'll abbreviate population data, or sample data. Usually we deal with sample data because it's too hard to ask everybody who they're going to vote for. It's too hard to measure everyone's blood pressure or something like that. So instead we gather a sample and try to draw an inference based on that sample. So data is the subset of the population study. This sounds like the definition for the word sample. Okay. Data can be population data. It's not just a subset. It's not just a smaller portion. So we got to answer false for this one. So this question is another stratified, cluster, systematic, or convenient sampling. So it wants us to identify the type of sampling method, I think. So before we get into that, just in case we haven't seen the other video, come on, there we go. A quick example of each of those. Okay. This is convenient sampling. I don't have it labeled. Convenience. Convenience sampling is a sampling method that we try to not use. Convenience sampling would be like a call-in radio station, and then they just ask people who you're going to vote for. It's convenient because the researchers, meaning the radio station, they don't have to do any work to gather the data, but it's got a lot of potential issues for bias because you're not getting everyone's opinion. You're just getting the opinions of the people who could call in and who were engaged enough to call in at that time. Let's see. Systematic, let's do systematic sampling next. Systematic sampling would be every 10th item on a factory line. You pick every 10th item. You've got a system to picking the items. Okay. Cluster sampling and stratified. Cluster sampling and stratified sampling are close. Okay. Cluster sampling and stratified sampling both break the population up into smaller groups. Cluster sampling samples in groups that are heterogeneous, meaning that they're mixed. There's like lots of different factors in the groups. Stratified sampling tries to it samples randomly from a homogeneous group. There's a group of people that are all similar in some characteristic. And so that's the example I have here. Like if you got 100 people in a town, you want to do stratified sampling to find out who they're going to vote for. We'll sample make your sample 20% from the rich part of town, 50% from the lower income part of town. Okay, so Jerry samples the population by dividing the residents by regions, randomly selects 12 of the regions. He collects data from all residents in the selected regions. Which type of sampling is used? So the regions, Jerry randomly selects the regions and then samples within those groups. Notice that Jerry isn't sampling proportionally, right? Jerry's not sampling based on a percentage. Jerry's breaking them down into two separate groups, but doesn't sample proportionally. So that means it's not stratified sampling. This is a cluster sampling. They used like a geographic location to sample within some groups. Let's see. Cluster sampling includes the steps: divide the population into groups, use simple random sampling to identify a proportionate number of individuals from each group. So the key word there is proportionate. If you're sampling based on some sort of proportion, that's not cluster sampling, that's stratified sampling. Okay. So let's do one more of these, then we'll pause so that I don't do all of them. Raymond wants to estimate the percentage of parents that use cloth diapers. He asks a randomly selected group of 200 parents whether or not they use cloth diapers. What is the parameter? So we haven't seen those words in this video yet. Parameter. A parameter is basically a number calculated from the population. A statistic, a number calculated from the sample. we often want to estimate the parameter. Like we want to know the population mean, so we estimate it by using a sample mean, by using a statistic. Percentage of parents that use cloth diapers. So the parameter he's trying to estimate, or he or she is trying to estimate, is the population percentage of parents that use cloth diapers, right? Raymond uses a sample to try to estimate the population percentage. So anything that came from the sample would be a statistic. But the question is, what is the parameter? What are they trying to estimate in the population? The percentage of all parents that use cloth diapers. The percentage of surveyed parents that use cloth diapers, that would be the statistic, okay, because that comes from the sample. 200 people surveyed, that's N, that's the sample size, okay? We use the letter N for that. Specific yes or no responses, that's the actual values of the variable. And then the number of parents, that's the number, that's a group of 200 parents. You know, that could be 400 maybe if they're assuming that they're sampling, they're asking both parents, but that number definitely is not the parameter, right? The parameter is the number we're trying to estimate in the population.